The idyllic family home in Abeokuta buzzed with laughter and the smell of jollof rice. It was Mama Funk's 60th birthday, and the long dining table shimmered under the warm light. Everyone was talking at once, cousins teasing, uncles laughing, and the sound of spoons clinking against plates. But for Amara, the quiet daughter who never quite fit in, the celebration felt more like a test than a party. Across the table, her sister Ife sat like a queen, elegant dress, gold jewelry, a perfect smile. When she spoke, the whole room listened. "So, Amara," she said, her voice sweet but sharp, "still no husband? Or are you waiting for one to fall from the sky?" Laughter burst around the table. Even Mama chuckled softly, covering her mouth. Ife wasn't done. "At least you could have given Mama a grandchild by now," she said, sipping her wine. Something to make her proud. The laughter grew louder. Amara's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear. She could feel her face burning as everyone's eyes turned toward her. For a moment, she thought of defending herself, telling them about her work, her dreams, her plans, but she stopped. Instead, she looked straight at her sister and said quietly, "One day, you'll understand silence isn't weakness." The laughter stopped for just a second. You could almost hear the clock ticking. Then someone changed the subject, and the noise returned. But Amara stayed still, a small, knowing smile forming on her. Something deep inside her had shifted, a spark she didn't plan to let die again. After dinner, the noise from the dining room faded, but the words still echoed in Amara's mind. She slipped outside to the porch, needing air more than company. The night was calm, the kind of quiet that usually brought peace, but not tonight. The laughter from inside had turned into whispers drifting through the open window. "Such a shame," one of her cousins said. 33 and still single. Maybe she's cursed. Another voice giggled, then came Ife's, sharp and cutting. "She's just jealous of my life." Who wouldn't be? Amara froze. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She tilted her head up, staring at the stars scattered across the dark sky. They looked like tiny pieces of something broken, maybe like her pride. She blinked fast, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. Her mind wandered back to Kunnel, the man she once thought would be her forever. He had been her best friend, her safe place. They'd talked about marriage, kids, a small house with a garden. But everything changed when she was diagnosed with fibroid. The moment she told him, his tone shifted. Weeks later, he walked away, saying he needed space. That space never closed. He married someone else a year later. Amara learned to smile through the whispers to keep her pain quiet. Her family had turned her heartbreak into gossip, as if being left made her unworthy. To them, she was the one who couldn't keep a man. They never saw the strength it took to keep moving, to rebuild herself from the inside out. She wiped her cheeks and took a deep breath. Enough was enough. She reached for her laptop resting beside her and opened it. The screen's glow lit her face in the dark, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Her project, the Rise Initiative, was almost ready. It was her dream turned into purpose, a program to help young women get education, healthcare, and confidence to build their own futures. As she reviewed the last document, her fingers moved with quiet determination. Every word, every number, every plan on that screen felt like a piece of her taking shape again. She didn't need anyone's approval. She didn't need to prove she was worthy of love. When she finally hit submit, a wave of relief washed over her. The night breeze brushed her face, soft and cool, as if the universe itself was whispering, "You did it." Amara closed her laptop gently and whispered to herself, "They'll know my worth soon," without a ring. The words hung in the air like a promise. Inside, the laughter continued, but out here, under the quiet sky, Amara finally felt something her family could never give her: peace. Morning light spilled through Amara's small apartment as her alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. Most people dreaded the early hours, but for her, this was when the world felt still, when her purpose spoke the loudest. She brewed a cup of tea, tied her hair in a bun, and opened her notebook filled with lists and plans for the Rise Initiative. It wasn't just her job, it was her heartbeat. By 7 a.m., she was already at the office, a modest space with peeling paint, secondhand furniture, and walls covered in colorful drawings made by the girls she helped. To anyone else, it might have looked ordinary, but to Amara, it was sacred ground. Each day brought new challenges: meeting donors, balancing the budget, organizing workshops, and helping young girls who had already faced more pain than most adults. She met with a small group that morning, 5 teenage girls from nearby villages. Some had dropped out of school because their families couldn't afford fees. Others had faced abuse or early marriage. Amara listened to their stories with quiet patience, her eyes kind but strong. She told them, "Your value doesn't depend on where you come from or who hurt you. It starts with believing you deserve better." The girls nodded, some smiling shyly. Later that afternoon, Ngozi, her closest colleague and friend, leaned on her desk with a grin. "You know, Ife has gold," she teased. "But you, my dear, have purpose. Let's see which shines longer. Amara laughed softly. Gold fades, she said. Purpose grows. The two women shared a knowing look, one of pride, resilience, and sisterhood. Ngozi admired Amara's calm strength, the way she stayed grounded even when others mocked her life choices. As the weeks rolled by, the Rise initiative grew in ways even Amara hadn't imagined. Donors started paying attention. Newspapers reached out for interviews. Photos of the girls, smiling, learning, thriving, began to circulate online. Each success was a reminder that silence could speak louder than any insult ever thrown her. One morning, as she checked her emails, a new message popped up with the subject line, Nomination, African Women Empowerment Award. For a few seconds, she just stared at it, frozen. Then she read the message twice to be sure it was real. The Rise initiative had been shortlisted for one of the most prestigious awards in the region. Ngozi screamed when she found out, but Amara simply smiled. She didn't tell her family, not yet. This wasn't about proving herself or seeking revenge. She had learned long ago that success wasn't about noise or attention. It was about impact. That night, she sat alone in her office, the sound of crickets filling the air. The walls were dimly lit, but her heart felt full. Amara whispered to herself, "This is what rising looks like." And for the first time, her silence didn't feel heavy. It felt powerful. Ife Adelik lived her life like a highlight reel. Every morning, before breakfast, she'd take photos, her gold jewelry catching the light, her designer bag perfectly angled, her smile flawless. Instagram was her stage, and she performed daily. Vacations in Dubai, brunches in Lagos, matching outfits with her children, she posted it all. Her followers loved her, calling her goals. She soaked up the attention, replying to comments with heart emojis and carefully chosen words that made her life look effortless. Mama Funk adored it. Whenever relatives visited, she would show them Ife's latest post. "See my daughter," she'd say proudly, tapping her phone screen. "Ife makes me proud. She gave me grandchildren. She's doing well. Amara should learn from her." Amara would just smile softly, never arguing. "Yes, Mama," she'd reply, helping out in the kitchen, her hands deep in soapy water as her mother's words washed over her like background noise. She was used to it now, the comparison, the small jabs that never seemed to end. Ife would walk in, perfume first, swinging her designer bag as if the whole world needed to see it. "Amara, you're still doing that charity work, right?" she'd ask with a laugh. "It's cute." But behind the shiny photos and practiced smiles, Ife's life was beginning to unravel. Her husband, Tund, the successful businessman everyone admired, was hiding more than she knew. Rumors had started spreading quietly through Lagos social circles. Tund's company was in trouble. Deals had fallen through, investors were backing out, and whispers of fraud were floating around. Ife brushed it off at first, pretending not to notice the tension in his voice when the phone rang or the late nights that stretched longer each week. She told herself everything was fine. But it wasn't. There were nights she couldn't sleep. Nights she sat alone in her luxury bedroom scrolling through social media. She'd stop on Amara's posts. Pictures from her NGO events, smiling girls in school uniforms, captions about empowerment and growth. Each post had dozens of comments and shares. People were calling Amara inspiring, strong, a true role model. Ife's stomach tightened as she read them. Her sister, the quiet one, the one everyone used to pity, was suddenly being celebrated. The same sister Mama often dismissed as a disappointment was now being recognized publicly, not for looks or luxury, but for something real. Ife told herself it didn't bother her. But it did. Deep down, it burned. The more she scrolled, the more she felt her confidence slipping. Her likes were dropping, her engagement slowing, while Amara's presence kept growing. One night, she slammed her phone down and stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror didn't look as glamorous as the one on her feed. The makeup couldn't hide the fear in her eyes, fear that her perfect world was cracking, and that soon, everyone would see the truth she tried so hard to hide. 2 months later, Mama Funk decided it was time for another family dinner. She called it a celebration of family achievements, her favorite excuse to gather everyone together and to brag. Ife immediately offered to host. "Let's do it at my house in Lekki," she said. "We should celebrate in style." Of course, no one argued. When Amara arrived that evening, the mansion sparkled like something out of a magazine, chandeliers glowing, waiters in uniform, expensive perfumes floating through the air. The family greeted her politely, but there was a certain chill beneath the smile. Some looked her up and down, as if trying to measure her worth by her plain dress and simple handbag. Dinner began with laughter and gossip. Ife floated around the table in a glittering gown, her bracelets clinking as she poured wine. Mama Funk beamed beside her, proudly telling stories about her grandchildren and Ife's strong marriage. Amara listened quietly, focusing on her food. She had learned not to rise to the bait. Then Ife leaned forward, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "So, Amara," she said, smiling sweetly, "you still chasing your little charity dreams? You need a man, not meetings." The room exploded in laughter. Someone nearly choked on their drink. Even Mama tried to hide a small smile. Amara's heart thudded, but this time she didn't shrink. She set down her fork, wiped her mouth gently, and looked straight at her sister. "Actually," she said calmly, "I just returned from Nairobi. The Rise Initiative partnered with the United Nations on a women's rights project." The laughter stopped instantly. The clinking of plates and forks froze. Ife blinked, caught off guard. "That's nice," she said weakly, trying to laugh again. But no one joined her. Mama Funk leaned forward, eyes wide. As in United Nations?" she asked, as if she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Amara nodded. "Yes, Mama. The UN recognized our work in empowering girls across Nigeria. We'll be expanding to East Africa next year." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly under the table. Silence filled the room, thick and uncomfortable. Even the children had stopped talking. For once, Amara wasn't invisible. Ife forced a smile, but her eyes darted nervously. She tried to change the subject, but it was too late. The energy had shifted. Mama Funk stared at Amara, pride slowly replacing her usual disapproval. She murmured softly. "My daughter works with the United Nations." The rest of the meal went on quietly. No more jokes, no more teasing. Amara didn't need to defend herself. She had already said enough. As she left the mansion later that night, she stood for a moment by her car, looking up at the sky. The stars seemed brighter than usual. For the first time, silence didn't feel heavy or painful. It felt like victory. The news broke on a bright Monday morning, and by noon it was everywhere: TV, Twitter, radio. Tunde Adewale, CEO of Adewale Holdings, accused of fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. The headlines spread like wildfire. Photos of Ife and Tunde at glamorous parties flashed on every screen, now attached to words like scandal and investigation. Ife's perfect world shattered overnight. Her phone buzzed nonstop, not with praise or compliments this time, but with messages filled with shock, gossip, and pity. By the end of the day, her so-called friends had stopped calling. The group chats she once dominated went silent. Luxury brands that used to send her free bags now demanded full payments. Even her favorite restaurant stopped offering her VIP treatment. Inside her grand Lekki mansion, the air grew heavy. Curtains were drawn, laughter replaced by argument. Tunde shouted into his phone for hours, trying to save what was left of his company. Ife stayed in bed most days, scrolling through social media and reading cruel comments. The same people who once envied her were now mocking her downfall. Meanwhile, Amara's life was taking a very different turn. Her NGO, the Rise Initiative, was growing faster than she ever imagined. A journalist from The Guardian Nigeria had reached out weeks earlier, and now her story was on the front page. "The Woman Who Builds Futures: How Amara Adelik is Changing Lives." The article was full of photos: Amara teaching young girls, organizing workshops, shaking hands with global leaders. It went viral within hours. Mama Funk bought several copies and read the article over and over. Her pride was mixed with guilt. For years, she had praised one daughter while overlooking the other. But now the roles had reversed, and painfully so. A few weeks later, the inevitable happened. Tunde's company was shut down. The mansion was on the verge of repossession, and creditors were circling. One evening, Mama Funk called Amara, her voice trembling. "Amara, my daughter, please help your sister. She's lost everything. The children, they have nowhere to go." Amara held the phone quietly for a moment. Memories flashed. All the times Ife had mocked her, belittled her, made her feel small. A part of her wanted to say no. But another part, the bigger one, couldn't ignore her mother's tears. "I'll handle it, Mama," she said softly. The next day, Amara made some calls through her NGO's network. By evening, she had arranged a small, furnished apartment in Surulere, simple but safe. She didn't tell anyone how she did it. There were no announcements, no posts, no speeches. When the movers arrived to pack Ife's things, the neighbors whispered and watched. Ife sat on the steps, sunglasses hiding her swollen eyes. She felt the weight of the life she'd built, all glitter, no foundation, crumble around her. And somewhere across town, Amara looked out her office window, not with pride, but with quiet understanding. Sometimes life has a way of humbling even the loudest stars. Ife's new apartment was nothing like the mansion she once called home. It was a small 2-bedroom flat in a quiet part of Surulere. The white walls were bare, the furniture second-hand, and the sound of car horns replaced the silence of her gated estate. Gone were the maids who used to wait on her, the imported meals, the constant flow of visitors. Now, morning started with her making breakfast herself and getting the children ready for school. She moved slowly, still in shock from how quickly life had changed. Just a few months ago, she was the envy of everyone she knew, the woman with the picture-perfect marriage, designer clothes, and a mansion that sparkled in every Instagram post. Now, Her husband was hiding from the media, and her friends had disappeared like smoke. The only person who called regularly was Mama Funk, and even her voice carried sadness instead of pride. One Saturday afternoon, there was a soft knock on the door. Ife opened it to see Amara standing there, holding 2 big grocery bags filled with food and household items. For a moment, Ife froze. She hadn't expected her sister to come. Not after everything she'd said, not after all the cruel jokes. "Hi, Ife," Amara said gently, stepping inside. She looked around, taking in the small space. It was clean but clearly lived in. The children peeked out shyly from their room. Amara smiled at them before setting the groceries on the counter. Ife stood silently, twisting her hand. Her voice finally broke through the quiet. "You must hate me," she whispered, eyes downcast. Amara looked at her, calm and kind. "No, Ife," she said softly. "I just learned to stop seeking love where I'm only tolerated." Ife's eyes filled instantly. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she sat on the couch, shoulders trembling. For the first time, there was no pride in her tone, no defensive smile. "You were the stronger one all along," she said, her voice cracking. "I was so busy trying to look happy that I forgot what real happiness felt like." Amara sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now you know," she said quietly. "Success isn't loud." The 2 sisters sat in silence for a long moment, the air thick with years of unspoken words. The children's laughter drifted faintly from the next room, a soft reminder that life was still moving forward. Ife wiped her tears and looked at Amara with a mix of gratitude and regret. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me when I least deserved it." Amara smiled gently. "Family isn't about who's perfect," she said. "It's about who shows up when everything falls apart." That evening, when Amara left, Ife stood by the window watching her go. The sky was turning orange with sunset. For the first time in years, she didn't feel superior or ashamed, just human. And maybe that was the start of something new. The night of the award ceremony felt like a dream. The grand hall glowed with golden lights. Cameras flashed from every corner, and rows of elegantly dressed guests filled the seats. Amara stood backstage, clutching her speech in one hand and her nerves in the other. Her name was already on the big screen, Amara Adelik, founder of the Rise Initiative, recipient of the National Women Empowerment Award. When the host finally called her name, the crowd erupted in applause. She took a slow breath and stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The lights were bright, almost blinding, but in the front row, she could clearly see her family, Mama Funk, sitting still and teary-eyed, and Ife beside her, looking humbled but proud. Amara smiled as the award was placed in her hands, a clear, shining plaque that caught the light just like her sister's jewelry once did. But this shine felt different. It wasn't borrowed or bought. It was earned. When she reached the microphone, the hall grew silent. Cameras pointed at her. Microphones picked up every breath. She paused for a moment, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "I was told I was nothing without a husband," she began, her voice calm but steady. "That I failed as a woman because I didn't give birth." A quiet murmur ran through the crowd. Her words hit home for many women sitting there, women who had heard the same painful thing. Amara continued, her voice stronger now. "But I learned something powerful. Your worth isn't measured by someone else's timeline. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming." Mama Funk covered her mouth, her eyes wet. Ife looked down, wiping away tears she didn't bother to hide. Amara took a deep breath and went on. "I don't have children of my own," she said softly, "but hundreds of girls now have a future because I refused to let shame define me." There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence, and then the hall erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping, cheering, some even wiping their own tears. Flashbulbs lit up the room like tiny fireworks. Amara smiled through her tears, holding the award close to her chest. For years, she had been laughed at, pitted, dismissed. But now, the same silence that once felt heavy and lonely had become her strength, her statement. As the applause roared on, she looked again toward her family. Mama Funk had her hands clasped, whispering a quiet prayer of gratitude. Ife was clapping hard, her face filled with something new, not envy but admiration. That night, as Amara walked off the stage, she finally felt light. The years of judgment and whispers no longer mattered. She had turned her pain into purpose, and her silence into a voice that could never be ignored again. After the award ceremony, the crowd slowly began to leave the hall, but Amara stayed behind for a moment, still trying to take it all in. The sound of applause still echoed in her ears. She had done it, not for fame or revenge, but for peace. As she stood by the stage, staring at her award, she heard someone call her name softly. "Amara." She turned around and saw Mama Funk walking toward her, her steps slow but steady. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Mama Funk opened her arms, and without hesitation, Amara stepped into her embrace. It was the first real hug they'd shared in years, warm, trembling, full of the words neither had been brave enough to say. Mama's voice cracked as she whispered, "Forgive me, my daughter. I didn't see you. I was too blind to notice the light right in front of me." Amara felt tears fill her eyes. "It's okay, Mama," she said softly. "You see me now. That's what matters." A few feet away, Ife stood quietly, her eyes red from crying. She looked nothing like the confident woman who used to dominate every room. Slowly, she walked closer, her voice low but sincere. "You didn't need a ring to shine, Amara," she said. "You became the woman we all should have been." Amara looked at her sister, her heart softening. "It's never too late to become better," she replied, reaching out to hold Ife's hand. The three women stood together, their hands intertwined, the air between them finally free of jealousy and pride. For the first time, they were simply family, not competitors, not comparisons, just women who had found healing in truth. Mama Funk smiled through her tears. "I used to pray for you to find a husband," she said with a small laugh. "But now I see, God already gave you something greater. You found yourself." Amara laughed quietly, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "Maybe that's what I was meant to find all along." As they walked out of the hall, the night air felt cool and calm. Cameras flashed as reporters called out Amara's name, but she didn't rush to them. She wasn't chasing attention anymore. She had already received the only recognition that truly mattered, her family's love. Ife slipped her arm through Amara's as they stepped into the parking lot. "You know," she said, smiling faintly, "next time you give a speech, warn us." "I didn't bring enough tissues." Amara laughed. "Next time, I'll make you write the speech with me." Mama Funk joined their laughter, her heart lighter than it had been in years. As they walked toward the car, their footsteps fell in rhythm. Three women who had finally learned that love, not perfection, is what holds a family together. And for the first time, Amara felt whole. The sun shone brightly over the new school in Sur-Alaire, the walls freshly painted and the playground buzzing with life. Amara stood at the edge of the field, watching the girls laugh and run in their bright uniforms, their voices echoing like music. Each child carried a small backpack, some worn, some patched up, but all filled with hope. She smiled as one girl tripped and quickly got back up, brushing herself off with a grin. Another ran past her, waving excitedly, calling out, "Miss Amara, look at me." Her heart swelled. This was what it meant to make a difference, to see potential where others saw nothing. "They laughed at my empty hands," Amara whispered, her voice soft but steady. "But those hands were free to build, free to heal, free to give. I didn't need their approval. I needed my purpose." Her eyes followed the girls as they settled under the shade of a tree, reading books together and helping each other with schoolwork. The camera would later capture her shadow stretching across the courtyard, strong and steady, standing among the lives she had touched. On the wall behind her, a large mural caught her attention. The Rise Initiative, founded by Amara Adelik. The bright colors, painted by the girls themselves, told the story of hope, resilience, and growth. Amara breathed in the warm afternoon air and let herself feel the quiet joy of the moment. She had spent years being judged, underestimated, overlooked. But here, surrounded by laughter and possibility, she finally understood. "This is my legacy," she whispered, watching the children play, her eyes glistening. "And it's enough." She turned toward the school gates, smiling as the girls waved, and for the first time, she felt completely at peace. Her purpose had become her life, and her life had become a story worth telling.